The earth is moving, the sky is cracking, the tropics are yawning, and we are full send on summer. As a matter of fact, my friends, this upcoming period will likely shape how we think about the summer of 2025 when we look back upon it. I hope you had a really nice weekend. The weekend is shrinking into the distance, and a brand new week full of opportunity and wonder emerges right over the horizon, right before us. I hope you're prepared to take advantage of it. And just from me, to you, I want to tell you something that's on my mind before we begin the weather show, folks. Don't let anyone bring you down this week. Don't let anyone have control over your emotional well-being or tell you that you're not good enough or that you can't do it or that you don't matter, because you are and you can and you do matter. You matter to cold rain, but most importantly, you matter to God. We're all made in His image and you matter. And so remember that and have a great week. Now, we've got a big show for you today. We've got a lot to talk about. Severe weather is, of course, still in the picture. We've got a big heat wave coming up. Tropics are murmuring, bubbling a little bit, and we've got some earthquakes that have been happening around the Ring of Fire, and we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to see what's going on with the space weather too. Look at your long range. So we've got a lot to get into. Remember, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, because I do these videos every day. Turn those notifications on, give the content a like, and please leave a comment. Let me know where you're commenting from, but most importantly, if there's anything I can be in prayer about for you, put that in the comment section. It gives us all an opportunity to pray for each other and walk alongside of each other and encourage each other, folks. And so I appreciate any comments that you make. Share the video with friends and family. Now, we're going to get into the severe weather right away, but before we do, this what you've been watching on your screen dance around here are precipitation probabilities in 24-hour increments over the next 6 days. Now, I bet if you've watched this show for any length of time, you can pick out where that high pressure ridge is. It's about right here, and you can see the flow around that in a clockwise fashion. These precipitation chances, if you will, are associated with disturbances in the flow, and they move clockwise around that high pressure. And you can see that here, but that's just for funsies, but that gives you an idea of where we're going over the next week or so and what we're going to be looking at. And we're going to give you a hint of that right now here on this screen. But we're going to get right into the severe weather threat, talk about that right now. Some of you are waking up to rain and heading off to work in the rain, particularly if you live in central Minnesota. Look at this big complex of showers and storms, heavy rains for the commute up here this morning, and even in some light rain in northern Minnesota, and then through middle Missouri into southern Illinois, including the St. Louis metro area. A lot of rain on the roadways and coming down pretty hard. We saw flash flood emergencies in St. Louis yesterday for several inches of rain falling rapidly. These thunderstorms are in a tropical air mass. They're going to drop 2 to 4 inches of rain in a very short period of time, particularly if they train over the same areas. Seeing some rain up here in the Intermountain Northwest, as well as the Four Corners region, a few showers down here. Big story of the day, though, is going to be the thunderstorms that develop here in the northern plains and propagate on off to the east and to the south. We have a slight risk up here in eastern Montana, western Dakotas, including Bismarck, back into Billings and Glasgow. But look, we've got this marginal risk around here. It's going to be plenty of instability down into Nebraska and into South Dakota, even into parts of Iowa. The question is, will the thunderstorm complex eventually form and move into that area? Will there be something to kick those thunderstorms off to begin with, to make use of that instability? That is still in question. We're going to have to follow the radar through the day, see what happens. But a tornado threat exists along a boundary stretching from west to east, central Montana, back into the border between the Dakotas. And then wind and hail also a threat this afternoon, particularly in the slight risk area. Tomorrow, risk shifts over into mostly middle Minnesota, including the Twin Cities area, with a big marginal risk around that for isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms. And then down here in Georgia, where we could see some cold pools developing with evaporational cooling. Got a little dry air in the mid-levels that'll evaporate, come down quickly out of the thunderstorms. Could see a few isolated to widely scattered wind reports down here. Tornadoes possible along that boundary with a strengthening low-level jet in the evening up here in the northern plains. Wind and hail possible too, particularly where the lapse rates are a little better up north. There is the surface map, and you can see this quasi-stationary front from Northern California up to, attached to this low pressure system here. It's very weak surface low in eastern Montana, but that's where our severe weather threat is. And then back into the Ohio Valley in the lower mid-Atlantic, the air is coming out of the north here in the northeast, pushing this backdoor front down south toward where cold rain lives here in the mountains of North Carolina. And hopefully we'll get in on a little bit of that action over the next couple of days, but that'll shoot back up as a warm front later this week. But anywhere in this green, you could see thunderstorms this afternoon on a scattered basis, a little bit of flooding possible where we've got flood watches up in Kentucky and over into Tennessee as well this afternoon for heavy thunderstorm rains coming down. There's your instability. We're going to roll this back so you can see it through the afternoon. Look at this building up this evening over the Dakotas, Nebraska into Iowa. That'll wane a little bit overnight, but come back full force tomorrow. This is very, very high instability. So when thunderstorms form, they're going to have a lot of fuel to work with. That'll wane again overnight Tuesday night. Here is a look at the future radar. We see thunderstorms and showers moving into the the Minneapolis, St. Paul, that's what I meant to say, metro areas by around noon time, and everything else is kind of quieting down a little bit. But as we get on out into 4 o'clock, we start to see a little bit of a renewed development in the lee of the Rockies and the plains here up in South Dakota and Nebraska as we approach evening. We get on into start to see thunderstorms just kind of a scattered basis develop. We'll see a few over Tennessee and Kentucky too in the southeast. But look, as we get on into the early evening hours, we're starting to see supercells form out here in Montana. A couple of those could drop tornadoes, but they're going to eventually coalesce into line segments, bring a wind threat, and then through North Dakota, it looks like, based on the HRRR here, and we're going to see that bow echo again push into Minnesota over the overnight hours, persist into the morning hours, bringing a wind threat, maybe even a little secondary wave coming in behind it Tuesday morning as we approach midday Tuesday, and then into Tuesday afternoon, more scattered thunderstorms developing over the high plains, that big complex working into mid-Minnesota again, bringing a severe threat, potentially a tornado threat up there as well. And that'll all push off and continue through Wednesday night. We're liable to see another bow echo, a third one, move into Minnesota, bringing a wind threat in there as we go through the evening hours on Tuesday. For the rest of the nation, just to give you a bigger picture here, Monday afternoon, we're looking at showers and thunderstorms just developing over the southeast and again over the southern plains in the lee of the Rockies. And again, as we get on into Tuesday morning, that'll all die out. We'll repeat that process again Tuesday afternoon with the main areas of convection, again, being along the northern tier and into the Midwest. We may see a couple of these little bow echoes push into Minnesota, one in Iowa, going into Illinois too as we get on in toward Tuesday evening. And that's how it'll work out. Southeast and up here in the plains, again, Colorado down into New Mexico, West Texas, going to see some thunderstorms, and over Montana. That's where our main flow is. We've got a little disturbance in the Four Corners region. We've got the main flow going across the north. So over the next couple of days, or the next week or so, we're going to watch these areas up here for the best potential for severe weather. And that's how it's going to play out, folks. That's your severe weather threat. Now we're going to take a look at the actual big story that's going to probably take hold and captivate everybody over the next 2 weeks, and that is the big heat. Surprise, before we get to the heat wave and long-range outlook, we have to do our daily weather IQ question. We're continuing our moon series here with a couple of more moon questions, and today's question is about the October full moon. What is it called? That's as simple as it gets, folks. Is it the goose moon, the hunter's moon, the hallow moon, or the bat moon? Which one is the first full moon in October? If you know the answer, type it in the comments. If you don't, just hang out to the end of the show and I'll let you know what it is at that time. I've got to start this segment off with a very ugly map. Look at this. All of this stuff that you see in orange and red, these are heat advisories. We're going to see heat indexes over 100 degrees in many, many of these areas this afternoon. Extreme heat warnings up here for the central Mississippi Valley, and heat advisories everywhere else. Extreme heat watches up here in Illinois as well, parts of Iowa. More smoke coming in out of Canada up here in northern Minnesota. Fog, a problem up here in North Dakota until about 12 o'clock or so. Red flag warnings out west for windy conditions, and don't burn anything in Kentucky and surrounding areas. Actually, you can burn all you want here, but you probably are not going to get a fire started, folks. It's going to be flooding potentially this afternoon with heavy thunderstorms possible. That is what I meant to say there. It is a flood watch that is up, not a red flag warning. Those are out west. Now, this afternoon, look for that wildfire smoke to continue to penetrate into Minnesota, and that will eventually lift out and help the air quality get a little bit better. We've got a flow that's kind of this way predominantly, with little troughs coming in occasionally, sending it to the south, sending the flow to the southwest once in a while. But hopefully the main flow being west to east will keep a lot of that wildfire smoke at bay. But that's what you've got to deal with. There's your air quality. That's where the bad air quality is today. So stay inside if you're sensitive to that. Windy conditions out here in the west and central portion of the country. We can see winds gusting 20 to 30, 35 miles per hour. Very dry in some of these areas, so again, don't burn anything out there. Could be a little gusty up here in the northeast too, but looking pretty good everywhere else. Dew points as we go on into the next week. Look at this. Next few days, I should say. Dew points very, very high, but look up here in the Great Lakes. These brown colors are dry air. The green colors are very moist air, so very dry out west, very dry air coming into the northeast. Look at that. Boom, look at that. That is just wonderful. It's going to feel like fall for a couple of days up here, even kind of gets into this corridor here as we go over the next couple of days here. This is Tuesday going into Wednesday. You can see that dry air up in the northeast, but look what happens as we get Wednesday into Thursday. Kind of get this big wave break of moisture flooding the northeast with moisture again, and we'll see the entire eastern United States locked into a tropical air mass come the weekend, and that is what we're dealing with. Now, looking at temperatures, these are apparent temperatures, so this would be heat index or real feel if you want to call it that, but this is today, this afternoon. Look, it's been hundreds in Florida. I've had somebody comment on my board or on the in the comment section about Florida. Going to feel like 100 down here, all the way up and down the Florida peninsula pretty much. The temperatures, actual temperatures, we're in the hundreds down here, and we don't see that a lot in Florida. But look at this, hundreds all the way up into the plains Monday, this afternoon. 90s in the Piedmont. Gets backed off a little bit here in North Carolina. That's good, but hundreds all the way up and down the central plains. Over approaching 110. Really gets cranking up right along the Mississippi River as we get on into Wednesday, into Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is kind of the apex of this round of heat, but it's coming back. It's not going anywhere, and we're going to see this kind of wax and wane over the next week or two, and then we start to see big heat index values into the 90s, even approaching 100 up into the northeast as we go on in through time. But look, we're out into Friday, and we're still seeing heat index values over 100 in many locations, and this may be underdoing those a little bit. So keep in mind that it's going to get very, very hot, and it's going to stay hot once it gets hot. It's not going to relent for quite a long time. So if you have outdoor plans, if you're working, drink plenty of fluids, take breaks when you can. This is going to be a big, big heat wave, the worst heat wave probably that we'll see this summer. Going to see how long that's going to persist next. If you've watched this show for a long time, you know this map very well. This is the ridge and trough upper air map, and what it shows is these ridge anomalies here where the heights kind of bend up and then where they bend down and dip like this. These are troughs, and they're associated with these blue colors and these orange colors. Orange are hot, blues are cold, relative to normal. That's how you can think of that. That's the easiest way to think of it. So we go out into the week. Look at this big ridge center. So folks in the Northeast, enjoy the fall because it is going away in a hurry as we get on into later in this week. That ridge centers itself over the east. It moves back to the center portion of the country, and then eventually as we get on out into next week, it gets centered over the Four Corners region. This is a heat pattern for the United States, but maybe here along the East Coast, we're not as hot relative to normal as folks out here under this ridge and just off of it, but we may see a little bit of a bitter signal for precipitation. Systems will move around the ridge and kind of come down like this, and so we may see some northwest flow events. I'm expecting that, and I'm expecting some of those systems to maybe get caught out here in the southeast, over off the coast and off into the Gulf too, increasing potentially a tropical disturbance formation if we can get the right conditions to coincide along with any disturbance that kind of moves off there. So there's our signal for precipitation. You can see where the biggest signal is, where the flow is over top of the ridge. A little bit of extra flow activity kind of working down off the ridge, eventually out in time down this way to the southeast, and then over here off and along the coast. Going to be a wet go of it over across much of Florida, and then off the southeast coast. If you're doing any fishing out here over the Gulf Stream, it's going to be raining. Along the beaches, it's going to be you can have elevated chances of potential thunderstorms daily and flooding potential, particularly back here in Louisiana. And anywhere in that area, we could see tropical formation over the next a couple of weeks. Here's the CFS, the climate models prediction for August. It looks very much like what we're seeing to end July. Big ridge over the nation's western portion, 2/3 of the country, and heat signal for much of the country. If that comes to fruition, the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook by the Weather Prediction Center is above for pretty much everybody except along the west coast. You guys are going to do okay out there. Alaska, Hawaii above normal. And there is your precipitation pattern going to be below normal across much of the interior west and central portion of the country, and maybe near normal along California and Pacific Northwest, above and back into the above zone as we get on out in time. That will diminish further as we go out in time as that ridge really expands above in Hawaii and below to above in Alaska. And there is your tropics, folks. We're going to end the show here with the tropics and then the solar and geological update where we've seen a lot of earthquakes. We'll talk about that in a second too, but we've still got this little area of disturbed weather out here where we're watching for potential formation. It's got about 48 hours before this little disturbance gets into hostile waters over in the Caribbean. It's not going to like the shear or the dry air that sits over there. A 20% chance of formation. I'm not really expecting this to develop. If it does, it's not going to do anything, and that's the only disturbance that's out there, folks. Here is the GOES full disk loop, and you can see all the weather that's going on across the United States. Got a little spin down here in Texas, some showers working through Minnesota, as you can see these bright colors here. But look out here in the tropical Atlantic. Here's our main development region right here, and there's that big storm system, by the way, that the National Weather Services or the Tropical Prediction Center or the I'll get it right. The National Hurricane Center is looking at this for development. It's just a broad area of circulation, but we've got storms moving off the coast, another wave coming off the coast of Africa in our MDR. Very dry air ahead of it, very dry air in the Caribbean, a lot of shear picking up. This feature is going to help to shear out the environment ahead of this. So I don't think we're going to see any development. That's pretty much all that's going on in the tropics right now. So that's that. We're going to take a look at the sun, see what it's doing, and what about those earthquakes? All is quiet on the space weather front. We've got a transequatorial coronal hole turning through right now. We'll expect to see a solar wind from that impact the magnetosphere in the next couple of days. I'll be watching, and I will let you know if we approach or get into geomagnetic storm conditions. Right now, not much going on. As you can see, everything's below 2 on the KP index over the last 48 hours. Sunspots, a lot turning away, a couple turning toward. This one here looks the most interesting, although it's not magnetically complex. Positive leads negative. We need those interspersed to see solar flaring. We're not seeing that, so not looking at anything there. We did have a bunch of earthquakes this weekend, predominantly as aftershocks. One 7.4 hit a Russian province. Didn't do a lot of damage. I don't think there are a lot of people living there, but it was pretty big. We've seen a lot of aftershocks there. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but we had another aftershock, 6.2 from Sandpoint. There's Sandpoint right about in there, and there's that Russian area that where we saw the big earthquake this weekend. Tsunami warnings were issued. I don't think anything happened there, but that's what's going on the earthquake front. Nothing doing volcano-wise, but moon data, for example, we've got a 13.5% waning crescent moon going down to new moon status on July the 24th. August the 9th to the next full moon. Keep that in mind, because look at this as we get on into, I'll change the display again, toward the end of July, we're going to see 2 meteor showers overlap the Perseid meteor shower. The southern Delta Aquariids and the Alpha Capricorniids are going to peak August 29th and 30th. So if you enjoy such things, get out in the night sky. You'll have a good moon. It'll still be, it'll be a waxing crescent at that time, but it should not pollute the sky too much. The Perseids actually peak August 12th and 13th, and the moon will be polluting the sky at that point with its light. So the July the 30th, 29th and 30th will give you the best chance to see lots of meteors and fireballs in the sky. Now, with that, we'll get into the answer to today's weather IQ question, and the question was, the first full moon in October is called what? The goose moon, hunter's moon, hallow moon, or the bat moon? The answer is the hunter's moon, and it's called that because that was when it was time to hunt and store food for the winter. I told you the other day, a lot of these come from old times when people used to use, really be in tune with nature and the weather and all of that stuff, and so they named all the moons and we've gone through most of them. But that's it for today, folks. The only other thing that I wanted to mention to you was that in 1987, one of the most famous rock albums of all time debuted, and that was The Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses, featuring Welcome to the Jungle, and it certainly feels like a jungle in the States this week and probably next week and probably the week after. So get used to it, get ready, folks, and stay cool if you can. That's it for today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll be back tomorrow with another Cold Rain's Weather World. In the meantime, this is Cold Rain reminding you that other stations run 24/7. We got you covered right here, right now, 4814. Take care, folks.